punished for your sins, but he is forgiving. Repent before it's too late. God gave his only begotten Son, so that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life.
The time has come for you to seek new levels of reality. Your ego and the self-game are about to cease. You are about to be set face to face with the clear light. You are about to experience it in its reality. In the ego-free state, wherein all things are like the void and cloudless sky, and the naked, spotless intellect is like a transparent vacuum. At this moment, know yourself and abide in that state. That which is called ego death is coming to you. Remember, this is now the hour of death and rebirth. Take advantage of this temporary death to obtain the perfect state, enlightenment. Concentrate on the unity of all living beings. Hold on to the clear light. Use it to attain understanding and love.
One of his students asked Buddha, "Are you the Messiah?" "No," answered Buddha. "Then are you the healer?" "No," Buddha replied. "Then are you the teacher?" the student persisted. "No, I am not the teacher." "Then what are you?" asked the student, exasperated. "I am awake."
Can you feel it? A sort of anticipation growing stronger and stronger? Another way of putting it is time is speeding up. I've heard that discussion for a while now. I know most people have felt it at some point, maybe while watching the news or perhaps something in their own lives. Something big is about to happen. You can see signs of it all over the world. Revolutions rapidly spreading across the Middle East. Protests occurring in America and Europe. Earthquakes are devastating the world like in Japan, Myanmar, and Greece. The global economy is failing so hard that it looks like we're looking forward into a global recession, the likes of which makes the 30s look like a cakewalk. Not to mention that if global warming doesn't put our planet into an ice age, we're gonna kill ourselves from overpopulation for sure. And using the rate of doubling, we definitely don't have the resources to survive the way we are for maybe a little over 10 years. Yet, despite all of these things, we're about to learn something amazing. It's something that will transform the Earth into something completely different, something incredible and beautiful. Many people across the globe have learned about this, and they've applied it to themselves and witnessed marvelous changes. Others have dedicated their lives to talking about it, to teaching it. I'm someone who's still exploring it, and I want more people to talk about it with.
If you had the chance to communicate one general idea to the American public, what would it be?
I guess it would be understanding and communication between the different age brackets. Which is no such thing about age brackets anyway, not in my mind. Because a person is not actually old in numbers of years, but how many miles he's traveled, how he keeps his mind active and creative. And I guess that'll be one general idea. There's millions of them though.
Allow your thoughts to dissolve.
Perception is based on what I think I see.
Relax your mind.
And what I think I embrace.
Release the tension.
Allow your mind to slip away.
Let go of fear.
There exists no phenomenon other than what arises from the mind.
I am
There
free
exists no
to
phenomenon
perceive
other than what arises
the
from the
unknown.
mind. There
I am
exists
free
no
to
phenomenon
engage
other than what
in
arises
self.
from the mind.
Silence your internal
I
dialogue.
allow myself the freedom to engage.
Release your mental chatter.
You are more than your physical body.
Allow your ego
Move
to
into
relax.
pure presence.
You are more
See
than your
the
physical body.
vision of naked awareness. I see.
Move into pure awareness.
Infinity is waiting. Perception is yours.
Feel the intensity of a silent mind.
You are gaining access to the infinite.
Feel the intensity of presence.
Your consciousness has awakened. You are experiencing the reality of what is. Move into the present. There is no past. There is no future. There is only now.
There exists no phenomenon other than what arises from the mind. There exists no phenomenon other than what arises from the mind. There exists no phenomenon other than what arises from the mind.
The human brain is a network of approximately 100 billion neurons. Different experiences create different neural connections which bring about different emotions. And depending on which neurons get stimulated, certain connections become stronger and more efficient, while others may become weaker. This is what's called neuroplasticity. Someone who trains to be a musician will create stronger neural connections that link the two hemispheres of the brain in order to be musically creative.
I don't know, I really feel like turning people on, quite naturally, on some kind of, at least entertainment, without being false about it, without being a superficial clown or whatever you want to call it, I don't know. And like if they don't respond, well then I just play for myself, and for the ones that will listen, if they do respond, well then this gives me more energy to work out, It's another way of communication and trying to make harmony amongst the people enjoying what we're trying to get across, Harmony is part of the first one too, anyway.
Virtually any sort of talent or skill can be created through training. Rudiger Gamm, who was a self-admitted hopeless student, used to fail at basic math, and went on to train his abilities and became a famous human calculator, capable of performing extremely complex mathematics. Rationality and emotional resilience work the same way. These are neural connections that can be strengthened. Whatever you are doing at any time, you are physically modifying your brain to become better at it. Since this is such a foundational mechanism of the brain, being self-aware can greatly enrich our life experience.
Mind, body, spirit. This is the sacred trinity that allows us life on Earth. Without even one of these three, we could not function properly. Yet, in today's world, we only really truly understand two of the three. We have scientifically mapped the mind and the body. We understand next to every aspect about each of them. Yet, what do we really know about the spirit, the soul? What is it? Where does it come from? For centuries, religions have been the primary source for answers pertaining to the soul, but they're not concrete. Many different religions have a different answer and ideas about how things work on this level. Recently, however, a discovery was made, which led to new discoveries and further discoveries. These incredible insights went largely unnoticed by the global community, and while governments and secret services of the world acknowledged them, it wasn't something that really got to the masses. Today, this information is still slowly coming out, and I'm gonna share it with you. In the world of science, what do we really know about thoughts? We know we can measure them. By hooking up scanners, you can measure the frequency that are emitted when you think them. They're measurable, yet there isn't anywhere specific in the brain that holds them. Is it possible that you create your thoughts outside your mind? Maybe not. But is it possible that you create your thoughts into the external world from your mind? This is what we're going to talk about today.
For years I have truly tried to live in accordance with your teachings, I said. Obviously I have not done well. How can I do better now? You think and talk too much. You must stop talking to yourself. What do you mean? You talk to yourself too much. You're not unique at that. Every one of us does that. We carry on an internal talk. In fact, we maintain our world with our internal talk. How do we do that? We renew it. We kindle it with life. We uphold it with our internal talk. Not only that, but we also choose our paths as we talk to ourselves. Thus we repeat the same choices over and over until the day we die, because we keep on repeating the same internal talk over and over until the day we die. The warrior is aware of this and strives to stop his talking.
Quantum physics is a very bizarre business. We talk about time in quantum physics, but we don't speak about it the same way we speak about locations of objects in space. When we talk about locations of objects in time, it has a very different sense. Let me explain. When we speak about locations of objects in space, we're talking about things which are observable, measurable. Time is one of those elusive kinds of things that is never observable. There's no observational operation which measures time. When you look at your wrist and measure the clock ticking, what are you measuring? You're actually measuring movement. You're not really measuring time at all. So there's no operational definition in quantum physics for time. So what is time in quantum physics? It's certainly present. We speak about things changing in time. Well, time is a kind of a yardstick, and it's not a yardstick in which real time is passing. It's a yardstick of possible time. So when we speak about time in quantum physics, we are on the edge of speaking about mythos time, not time, not real time, but time of possibilities. In other words, we speak about how things could possibly change in time, but not how things are actually changing in time, because the time element is not really present.
You're giving me the sense that all of our science, all of our quantum physics is like this little ball that exists in this much larger realm of mythos, and what you're doing is sort of punching through the walls somehow and getting out into that larger world and then looking back at science.
Exactly. Quantum physics is a very small stepping stone in a huge pond. And where the next stepping stone is, well, there's water in between. I mean, I don't know where it is. So all I have to do is jump out into other ways of experiencing the world, and then see if I can look back to where I came from and see if there's a tie in a relationship. And that's what I always will be doing. I mean, I'm not just interested in staying on the same stone and looking around. I really want to get to another stone in the pond and see if I can look back to what quantum physics is saying and see, well, God, it's a part of the truth, but it ain't the whole truth. We're still missing something. And that, I think, is what I'm here to do. That's my job. That's my role.
You know what's coming to me, Fred? I want to say to you, you're weird, and I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Yes. Well, I don't really see myself as being weird. I see myself as being human. Very much a human being. I think I feel more of myself as a human being now than I ever have felt being a student, growing up, whatever. I finally sense myself as part of humanity. And that's something I never had before. I always saw myself as above it somehow, or superior to it somewhere because of my intellect. Now I don't feel that way. Now I see that there are other ways of seeing things that are very enriching to my life. And even when I hang out with people or friends or whatever and share this with other people, it seems to enrich their lives too. And for me, that's very, very important. I would say that I would say that rather than weird, I would say I'm alive. I am of the weirdian way. The way of weird is a way of seeing, a way of being that first came into being during the time that Anglo-Saxon shamanhood and so-called witchcraft is going on in probably the primeval forests of Germany.
At first, when we had our first microscopes, when we saw cells, we thought, oh my God, those are so small. They gotta be the smallest thing the universe does. And then we found that those cells were made out of atoms. And the atoms are so small. We thought, oh, those are gotta be the God particles. Those are the smallest thing the universe does. And then we found that those atoms have nuclei in the middle, protons, neutrons. Those are teeny, weeny particles compared to the size of the atom. The universe goes all the way down to that size and then stops and says, okay, that's small enough, I'm not doing anything smaller. However, then we found quarks and so on. And at this point, we're building accelerators that are enormous, an extraordinary device that accelerates particles at faster and faster rates to get smaller and smaller particles, thinking every time that we're going to find this fundamental particle that can no longer be divided. However, every time some physicist somewhere write a new equation saying, oh, maybe there's another energy level, and then next thing you know, we're building a larger accelerator to try to find it. And now we're looking for things that are billions of times smaller than an atom. But based on this concept that we've just learned about, we would know that this can be done to infinity, that you can always get a smaller and smaller particle if you could get a larger and larger accelerator. So what is this really telling us about the universe? I think that a more worthy exploration would be to stop looking for a fundamental particle and start looking for a fundamental pattern of division. Because if we could find a pattern in which the universe divides, then we would have the key to creation. And that could be really useful.
I think, therefore I am not. Only when the mind is silent, I am. After Dimensions, things got a little hectic. There were literally 5 different topics that opened up for me to talk about, and I didn't know which one to cover. Fortunately, I had this one saved on the back burner, so while I figure out which order to do these next ones in, we can talk about meditation. There's quite a bit going on with meditation than most people realize. The average person will tell you that meditation is simply a tool to calm you down, when in fact, that's probably the least important thing it's good for. We're going to talk a lot more about that soon, but first I want to tell you a story about Robert Monroe. Now, if you were to read his biography on Wikipedia, you'll learn that Robert Monroe was a radio broadcasting executive that was researching the effects of sound patterns on the brain and sleep learning. Then he started exploring out-of-body states of consciousness and formed his own company, the Monroe Institute. And that's about all you'll learn. Unfortunately, that's not really what he did. He learned so much more than anyone today will accept. In fact, he found out more about the nature of the universe than any modern scientist could tell you. The stuff that he has written about seeing and doing out of body is incredible. He's completely mapped out a whole nother world. You might think of him as the Marco Polo of the next world. We've explored the lands and the oceans, and now we're exploring the heavens or the dimensions of consciousness. In his book, Ultimate Journey, Robert Monroe goes to great lengths to map out the human mind, as observed from a more conscious understanding. This is what he says. As human minds, we are what we think. We are also what others think. Most of this has little to do with our physical bodies when we go below the surface. To deal with this more closely, let us create a model of the human mind as it is and operates in practice. A pragmatic model, if you like. Imagine it structured in layers, like an onion, and let us work from the in to out. At the very core is the core self. This is the original human mind, the sum of our experiences without limitation. The inner core is composed of what we have lived and consciously thought to date. The emotions and dreams we've experienced, whether we remember them or not, the pains and the pleasures, the daydreams, wishes, and hopes. This is our essence, our spirit. It is who we really are. Above that is the animal sub-self. This is the layer that is most difficult to control. This is where the filtering, discoloration, and contamination takes place. The problem is that we think we need to rely on it or else we can't remain physically human. Physiologically, it is the cluster consisting of the mammalian brain and the limbic system. Above that is the conscious mind. This layer can be identified as what you think you are. However, it is entirely different from knowing what you are. The reason for this is that only a part of the inner core is available to the conscious you. Hence, there is much distortion, as expression has to pass through the animal sub-self. The conscious mind may be wholly accurate, but some areas may give an opposite interpretation from that of your core self. Though much of this layer is deliberately hidden from others, a considerable part is expressed in your outer self. Because it is so strong, we have no choice in this. This layer is also complicated by belief systems. For many of us, the complexity becomes a maze. It is no surprise that most of us don't find a clear way out. The next outward layer is the human mind external. This is what we think others think of us. This is a grand mixture because part of it is intuitive, non-verbal communication, which gets confused with what our sensory and analytical perception tells us. This layer is constantly changing with new experience and new perception. It is also controlled heavily by cultural context. We develop these artificial and synthetic drives of motivations, which most often leads to mental and physical dysfunction. Instead of being yourself, you begin to lead a totally reactive existence, which is what many people do. If you allow this lifestyle to take over, it can be a living hell. Moving outward, the next level is the human mind role. This is like the skin, what you want others to think of you. This is fairly simple. It is the presentation of the self. Mostly, it is set by the acceptability and needs of the world around you, superimposed hopefully with waves and pulsing thrusting from your inner core. The presentation of self is careful and usually covered with a sheen of deception. In hard cases, no signs of the inner layers ever even appear, even under great stress. And finally, the outermost layer, much larger than you'd expect, is composed of others' thoughts of you. Consider yourself as existing wherever and whenever another person or being thinks of you, even only occasionally, living almost through memories, but by creating those memories, they are connecting with you, and they do exist all around you. It is because of this that most often, others' perceptions of you have very little awareness of what's in your inner core self. The disguise and filtration are in the way. Many people have a hard time connecting with their core self, their spirit. Most don't even know that it exists, though that is changing. So, moving on, let's answer the biggest question here. What is the point of meditation? Well, everyone has a different answer to this question. Early research showed that meditation was good for lowering blood pressure, lifting depression, reducing cholesterol, and making physical changes to the brain. These are all incredibly Western views about meditation. There are lots of different types of meditation, but in the traditional Buddhist sense, all of these different forms of meditation all have the same common end result, which was spiritual enlightenment. And through that comes the elimination of suffering. This elimination comes with the understanding of the unity consciousness, which we talked about in Lesson 4. Realizing the oneness of all things. See, the traditional intent of meditation is not to eliminate suffering by lowering blood cholesterol or stress, but to eliminate suffering by shifting perspective. Meditation teaches you to turn your attention away from the mundane physical and personal experiences of the world, where problems seem significant, and turn to experience life through a broader, more interconnected perspective, being one with everything. The process transcends and changes our sense of self, so that our problems seem less meaningful and less troubling. The point is not to reduce the physical cause of discomfort through improved health, but to change the importance we place on that discomfort. Maybe it's time to revisit that quote from the beginning. I think, therefore I am not. Only when the mind is silent, I am. When the mind is silent, you can connect fully with the core self, the spirit, going beyond the conscious mind and the animal sub-self, and being in the I am. Finally, let's talk about binaural beats. Binaural beats were first developed by Robert Monroe at the Monroe Institute in experiments to induce different states of consciousness and out-of-body experiences. They are essentially audio tracks that place a single tone in each ear, slightly different from the other, which actually creates a third tone in your head. One ear goes woo, and the other tone goes woo, and in your head you hear woo, 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 woo. It's pretty cool. What this does, in effect, is actually change your brain frequency, putting you in a different mental state. If you Google it, you can find HemiSync, which stands for Hemisphere Synchronization. This is the Monroe Institute's brand of binaural beats, which is very professional, and they have both guided and free-flow meditations that will help you get into different states. If a regular Joe decided to try it out, while listening to these tones without any meditational background, it probably wouldn't work so well. You have to be good at getting into a deep meditational state before you start using these tones. If you're serious about trying these and experiencing these effects, it's almost crucial that you learn to meditate on your own first. Get really good at it.
Social psychology often looks at the basic human need to fit in and calls this the normative social influence. When we grow up, our moral and ethical compass is almost entirely forged by our environment, so our actions are often a result of the validation we get from society. But new developments in neuroscience are giving us a better understanding of culture and identity. Recent neurological research has confirmed the existence of empathetic mirror neurons. When we experience an emotion or perform an action, specific neurons fire. But when we observe someone else performing this action, or when we imagine it, many of the same neurons will fire again, as if we were performing the action ourselves. These empathy neurons connect us to other people, allowing us to feel what others feel. And since these neurons respond to our imagination, we can experience emotional feedback from them as if it came from someone else. This system is what allows us to self-reflect. The mirror neuron does not know the difference between it and others, and is the reason why we are so dependent of social validation and why we want to fit in. We are in a constant duality between how we see ourselves and how others see us. This can result in confusion in terms of identity and self-esteem, and brain scans show that we experience these negative emotions even before we are aware of them.